Hello and welcome to Community at the Core, a DCA podcast. Happy fall, everybody. This is a perfect episode, I think. So we are, I think, in fourth or fifth recording of DCA's internal podcast. You've heard us in some other veins as we talk about programs, services, and the way in which DCA serves its community. We are in November season, and I cannot think of a better topic as we're in this season of thanks and giving and sharing together, that we talk about a program that truly sets that mission at its heart in its execution and success. And that is the shared services programs set forth through the Division of Local Government Services. So this episode is going to be an informative one that gives us a focus on how we've successfully shared information, funding, and resources to the hundreds of local, state, and county partners to help realize true cost savings in the state of New Jersey. But we also want to give a clear reminder point that this is about making sure folks know that your taxpayer dollars and the way that we implement them is being done effectively, efficiently, and to your benefit. And we've got two subject matter experts that I want to make sure we highlight before we dive in. But these are individuals along with an incredible team in the division that have really driven forward the way that shared services can be not just a piloted concept, not just a one-off, but something that's ingratiated into the foundation of good governance in New Jersey. So really excited about this episode. I also want to give a quick brag because it is about the numbers. We are big numbers people around DCA. And I want to make sure to note for folks at the top, since the inception of the Shared Services Program by the Department of Community Affairs in 2018, the Local Assistance Bureau has recorded over 4,500 shared services agreements. And that has resulted in an estimated cost savings of over $364,707,955. I think I got all those numbers right. But that's worth echoing at the start, because while this is about collaboration, building trust and foundation in our government, it's also about making sure that taxpayers and their dollars are getting realized in real time every day. So we have with us today two rock star guests that I want to make sure we give some highlight to. First, we have Richardella, our Local Assistance Bureau Chief, former Chief of Police, retired, who is in our Division of Local Government Services for DCA. We also have Eileen Brennen, our Municipal Technical Advisor for the Local Assistance Bureau in the division. Welcome you both. I want to just make sure to underscore that both Eileen and Rick have been in trenches at the local level for several decades. That has informed the way in which they are getting to solutions-focused approaches to these challenges. So welcome you both. Excited to dive in and really share some information so that, frankly, we can get more people on this program, right? I think that's the hook here today. So we're going to sell a little bit, and we're also going to inform folks that may not have heard about this really critical and helpful and free resource that's available in the state. So welcome, Rick and Eileen. I want to start off first, right? We know that shared services has been a bit of a passion project, but now has really set true structuring within the Division of Local Government Services. I'd like to hear a bit from you, Rick, and we'll start off first, about who really initiated the shared services program and what was the why behind it? Why was it created, and what was the goal when this was getting germinated?
First, let me say thanks for having us on. I think it's great, this program with shared services. And I want to give a shout out to my team because even though I'm the leader of this program, there's 15 other people who are involved in it to help make it a success story. In 2018, Governor Murphy appointed two czars at Drew University. And during that program, one of the czars was a Republican and one was a Democrat. And they committed to starting the shared service program where they were going to travel around the state of New Jersey and talk about municipalities that can combine into one or share some type of service, whether it's police, fire, EMS, or municipal finance officers or business administrators. So the program was very, very well received at its inception in 2018.
Now, speak a little bit, because it seems to me that this required a cross the aisle conversation, and what was that focus point? What was the goal when that collaboration really got formulated?
Well, it was very exciting to see that the governor picked one Democrat and one Republican, so we had bipartisan buy-in to the program. And we've noticed that during our many years that we've been involved in this program, that bipartisan has really taken a very big leap to get the program off the ground. And we've reached across the aisle many, many times, and everybody has bought into it. And it's really made it a very successful program, and we've really built up a lot of momentum since 2018. And you have to give credit where credit is due. Governor Murphy, Jacqueline Suarez, our commissioner, right, and the two czars have pushed this program immensely.
And it's important. I think it's important to know the investment of the leadership, right, in the last nearly 8 years since this inception, that you have to have that buy-in, and I think at the top level for it to really trickle down and catch some momentum. And when we talk about shared services, right, the goal I know was making sure that there was operational efficiency in these kind of hard to trot areas of governance, right? And you all have seen behind trenches. It gets complicated, it gets wetty, and it can be painstaking. And so how are we cutting through that static, that morass, and making sure that you've got performance effectiveness, you've got the cost savings, and also some legacy and practice. Now, Eileen, I think when you hear shared services, that's a pretty macro concept, right? You all deal with it every day, but give our listeners a little bit about what are those programs, right? And I think the Local Assistance Bureau, which I know is where you're kind of quarterbacking this initiative work, is a bit of a nucleus in that execution. Can you share a bit about those specific programs that are coming out of the lab?
Out of the lab, yes. The Shared Services Program, for one, is administered by the lab. The Local Efficiency Achievement Grant Program is a grant program that's also administered by the lab, and it's a grant program that is used to incentivize shared services. So it becomes a little bit part and parcel of the Shared Services Program. And then there's the School Regionalization and Efficiency Grant Program that is also administered. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show.
Yes.
The Transitional Aid to Localities Program is an aid program to support distressed cities, to support cities that have structural deficits. And our team of technical advisors also act as fiscal monitors and help municipalities to create better efficiencies and work better together under the funding that they receive from the state. And also the professional technical assistance that's provided to local governments by our subject matter experts at the division at free cost.
Free costs. We're going to say that a couple times, right? Because I think folks sometimes are wondering, what is my government kind of doing for me? And you make an important point, right? The foundation of some of this, and really local government services, is in the fiscal. It's in the financial, because I think we all know that's kind of at the bones of the way that good governance starts to actually occur in action. What I love about the lab is that, and you've intimated to this, right? The finance prong is key here, but there's a lot of different technical advisors and layering, right? Because it isn't just about the dollars, it's how they're being applied, the why behind it, and can it be better? I want to hear a little bit from you and Rick about where that skill set in these varieties of governmental operations is really starting to manifest, right? And where we've seen some great examples. But I want to hear, what are a couple of kind of skill set points or areas in which the lab has really been there for municipalities as they tackle these innovative budget approaches and financial approaches?
Well, I can tell you that, again, talking about our team of professionals and their skill sets, we have a variety: police, fire, EMS, water and sewer, CFO. So any one of those individuals with that skill set can go into any municipality and lend assistance to them. And as Eileen had stated, at no cost to the municipality. In fact, it's very interesting as we go around the state doing presentations, or we go down to the League of Municipalities and make presentations. It's interesting to find out that many officials, public officials, had no idea that the Local Assistance Bureau even existed, that we had the program in place. So when they find out about it, they very, very anxiously contact us. And before you know it, we're engaging in them to help them create a shared service. One of the examples that I'd like to use is the one that happens in Monmouth County with dispatching. We started helping them with dispatch, providing them with the LEAP funds that Eileen spoke about earlier, and she's going to go into detail with later on, where they could make an application with a surrounding town or with the county, and they get funding startup costs to set the program off the ground. Dispatching seems to be a big one. Why should you pay for dispatch in your own individual municipality when the county is already providing the program to you?
Right.
The other issue that was very, very big is the feasibility studies that we do. And again, at no cost. If you would like us to come in and do a feasibility on public safety, police, fire, DPW, water and sewer, any one of those items, we have the expertise to come in and do it, again, to emphasize at no cost to the municipalities. We can also help you recruit individuals for your municipality, whether or not you're looking for a business administrator, tax assessor, tax collector, a chief financial officer. We have the professional skill sets to help you bring those people to volition, to your department, and get them off the ground to start working for you.
And you know what I love so much about what you and the team and the czars have been doing? We've been getting outside. And to your point, right, you would think, and I think this is an assumption about government, right? Government thinks that all government knows government, right? And when you're a everyday taxpayer or you're a local official, sometimes you feel like you're on an island. And a lot of this has been getting people to get connected back to this and also being upstream, right? And I think I'm probably muttering a bit of my commissioner's kind of missives, right, as we think, how are we being proactive and getting ahead? And what Lab's been able to do, and your point about the EMS is so brilliant, is here's a public safety challenge, a service point, right, that comes every day all the time. How are we economizing it and blending this so that the services got improved, so that the response time was structured in a better and more continuous way, right? And you didn't have as much disruption, and how it was easier for folks to get that support. And until I joined the department, I didn't realize DCA touched all of these different essential services that taxpayers and our residents have to engage with, whether they like it or not. And in one of the most dangerous points, and I'm going to say chief in this moment, Rick, right? When you've had to be in that public safety standpoint, you don't have time to figure out the budget, the coordination, the extra phone call to get to the yes. So I think that's a perfect highlight program. Briefly on that, you've touched a bit on the different component points, how we're bringing in information, the feasibility studies. Walk me through a bit of what are those actions, right? What is the interconnectedness and the way in which you all are developing the collaboration with our professionals? How are they engaging with people on this?
Very interesting question. What we do is we set up a meet and greet where myself and or Eileen will go and meet with the public officials along with the expert that they need in their community, whether it's a CFO, whether it's EMS, police, fire, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Then we sit down and we have meetings with them. We have meetings with all the employees, and we have meetings with the unions. Mm. We try to be upfront, transparent with everything. Don't want to hide anything from anyone, and you tell everybody that upfront that you're here to come up with some type of shared service. And surprisingly, we have found out that sometimes the unions or the employees come up with great ideas that help us get to yes. Mm-hmm. And that's important because our program gets collaboration and we get to yes, whether we have to do something through attrition, whether or not we have to find positions for people someplace. When we did the Lake Como and Belmar Police Department, we had some idle positions that weren't taken. We contacted the prosecutor and we contacted the sheriff's office, and the officers were able to find soft landings in the program. Our program does not lay off anyone. We find attrition or we enhance the program through attrition down the line.
I love what you mentioned kind of earlier in the sense of the sit down, right? And establishing that you get all of the key stakeholders decision makers and smart heads around the table. That feels like a small part of this, but I think the most important, right? People think, oh, you just have a meeting and this. If it was so simple, people would have done it before. So what I love about this is that it's getting everyone into the space, but because we've got these experts, we've got analytics that we're tying in, right? We've got the numbers, we've identified the issue. And then what I love about this is that we're building the trust in everybody seeing information at the same time, right? And I think we've learned under this leadership with the administration, with the commissioner, we've gained larger when we've brought more folks into the room. We haven't assumed as, big old state government that we know all the answers.
Correct.
And that humility, I think, is really paying some social dividends, right, in this catching on. Aside from the shared services, right, because I think that's important, but this is a pretty macro shop, right, Eileen? I mean, you've named a couple of these kind of enhancement areas, but with our technical advisors, it's not just shared services, right? I mean, we're intimating into a couple of very unique and specific resources and touch points for our residents, for our municipalities. Can you or Rick kind of speak to some of those examples and a bit of a success story as well? Because I think folks need to hear where this landed and how we quarterbacked and got some goals on this.
Sure. As Rick mentioned earlier, the feasibility study aspect of it is a great importance. And those studies are tailored for each municipality throughout the whole state. And we all know that New Jersey, as small of a state as it is, it's very diverse geographically and culturally.
Right.
You have the Northeast that's very densely populated. And so we're seeing a trend now with volunteerism specifically being down for EMS and for fire. So we're called in quite often by a group of municipalities to help brainstorm ideas and ways in which they can collaborate together, whether it's trying to increase and gain interest in volunteerism for EMS and for fire, and drill down into the specifics of a particular region. Like, say, in northeastern New Jersey, it's very different from Cumberland County. Geographically, everything's a little bit more spread out. So we're bringing stakeholders together and conducting these studies. We conducted a study a couple of years ago in Camden County area where they wanted to bring together and regionalize a lot of their EMS services. We're still working on that, right? So it's several municipalities in Camden County. Nothing is done, it's not done in a vacuum. It's done in ways in which people can collaborate. We're getting professionals involved and trying to synchronize the best way to formulate or create operational efficiencies in a region, whether, again, it's in the southern part of the state or in the shore area, where they're seeing different issues coming out of different regions of the state, mostly EMS. We're also seeing a great interest in regionalizing DPW services for sanitation.
Department of Waterworks, right? Those types of essentials.
Yes. And the costs associated for the municipalities. So we tailor our studies for the different regions.
Right.
And we'll be looking at that in Monmouth County pretty soon, too. So we have the Northeast region where it's densely populated and there are a lot of people, and just creating the most efficiencies for those regions up there.
And you hit a buzzword that's important, and I want to, pivot to that a little bit too, right? The regionalization focus on this, I think, is really valuable here. And I know in this plethora of kind of regionalizing for services, right, we're also talking about institutions. And so I want to also hear from you and Rick. The school regionalization, I think, is a key focal area, right? And schools are a critical linchpin. And I think sometimes there's this assumption that they're separate, they're on kind of a league of its own. And I think what's been brilliant about the lab and the team is saying we're going to combine this as we're looking at the macro picture. So I want to shift real quick to where have we really stepped in with regionalization. So with school regionalization, walk me through a little bit, because I think that's a really great success point with our technical advisors and what that entails. So walk me through on that success point.
So the school regionalization came out of the legislator's office, and they thought it would be great to have it hooked up with the shared service program and the LEAP program originally. What they wanted to do was set up a curriculum to be the same in all the sending and receiving districts. So if they had a few grammar schools, they weren't getting the same curriculum until they got to the high school that they were sending these children to. So they came up with this program, and this program allows a consultant to come in to the 2 municipalities or the 3 municipalities that they might be looking at to do an evaluation on the number of students, segregation, and how long seat time is for each child on the bus to see if it's worthwhile to send the children to the neighboring schools. It takes about 90 to 120 days for the consultant to finish the report. Once the report is done, it's evaluated by our team at the local assistance bureau, and then they decide whether or not, through a referendum, whether or not the residents want to go ahead with it. And the great product on this program is the fact that you can get a better student funding aid by the state legislators if you enter into some type of shared service with regard to the school regionalization project.
And what I like about this is that, number one, this is a collaboration point with a very key feature of government, right? And that's school support, right? That's coming out of our Department of Education, right? And at the local level. And what is so attractive to me about this is that as we're talking about the way in which the schools can participate, we're able to give them some data, right? We're able to give them some real support when we get these studies kind of completed. And then it's informed decision making. And I think as a parent, right, and I'm one of those, it gives a comfort point when we're seeing actually how this is being evaluated before the money's applied and that it's really going to carry, right? There's some user confidence, right, for lack of a better phrase. Pivoting a bit, because school regionalization I know is one kind of key swan song out of the lab. I also want to talk a bit about a specific paradigm with some of our municipalities. Eileen, I think you had the incredible task but successful completion of making sure that we had some true success in South Orange and Maplewood. Can you walk our listeners through that a little bit? I want them to hear a bit of that lived experience.
Sure. I certainly can't take any credit for the success of it. I was one of the technical advisors shepherding it through the process. It really came at the success of the local officials in South Orange and Maplewood. Mm-hmm. The idea of combining paid fire departments came about, probably 25 or 30 years ago, and only in the last 10 to 12 years did the challenge of combining 2 paid large fire departments with people, like real living people. It's not just conducting a feasibility study, or not to diminish the value of sharing services for equipment, but when people's lives are involved, everybody who comes to the table has to be open and transparent, and you need tremendous civic engagement because change is always so challenging. Mm-hmm. So working together with South Orange and Maplewood Fire Department merger was a process of over a couple of years. Mm. And there were a lot of meetings, like Rick mentioned earlier. There were meetings, there were data points, there was combining salaries and union contracts, and the unions got involved and the department got involved, and we worked very closely with Civil Service Commission and the Division of Pensions and Benefits to ensure that everybody who was impacted by this, not only the citizens, because the citizens benefited from a greater enhanced service, correct? Right. And South Orange and Maplewood are tremendous neighbors to one another. They actually have a regional school district there, mm-hmm. and they did that years ago. So the fire department was the next step. But again, it was reaching across the aisles with the fire chiefs and with the employees of both fire departments, with the officials in both municipalities, and the unions too. There were bumps and bruises, as there always are, right?
Difficult conversations
that needed to be had, but there was collaboration, and there was a lot of transparency and collaboration and a give and take on both parts. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's the true success story in any collaboration. It's a marriage. It's a marriage. You have to give a little bit. You have to give a little bit.
Yes.
And you have to be willing to be flexible and adaptable. And the data point, we drilled down and did the feasibility study that was conducted years ago, but then to combine salaries and contracts and all of that, we went back and forth. It was real informative information. The South Orange and Maplewood Fire Departments, they created what they call, in the shared services world, a joint meeting, which is a separate entity. And so there were pension, we had to make sure that everything moved fluidly once the operation of the new joint meeting began. And so it was challenging, but it was a lot of fun too at the same time.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from that process.
And, there's an emotional intelligence I think I want to highlight here, right? So you talked a little bit about there being those difficult conversations. I think that takes courage. And it sounds to me like we also had people who decided to say, we can talk about the discomfort of this. We can talk about the fears around it, right? And I think, Rick intimated earlier, right? People hear shared and they think we're going to lose something. And this is a great example that it disrupts that myth, right? That as we look to save, that you don't have to compromise on standards, that quality can be better, and that everybody can win. And I know that's not always what we hear, especially in current times. So I love that because it's a living success in the sense that it took the people at that ground level for that to really have legs, right,
Yes.
and land.
Yes.
Now, I want to make sure too, and we started off the beginning of this episode talking a bit about the lab overview. And, Eileen, you had listed in that conversation, right, this conversation about the Local Efficiency Achievement Program, the LEAP. And we are an alphabet soup in government, right? We love our acronyms. But those words are really important. And I want our listeners, especially our, public sector folks, right, those who are in government to hear this a bit. Walk everyone through, and I need you to give this to me in baseline ABCs, right? Because I think sometimes folks get intimidated when they hear these things, and I think this is a simple but brilliant concept. Talk us through the LEAP program. What's the dollars in it? How is it structured? And tell us also, what have we found in the data since we started that program?
Sure. No, I'd love to. The program began back in 2019 and is funded out of the state budget. Governor Murphy was committed in his process of wanting to incentivize shared services. So that's where the LEAP program was born. And the LEAP program stands for the Local Efficiency Achievement Program. It is a program of 3 different types of grants: challenge grants, implementation grants, and county shared services coordinator grants. The challenge grants are grants that are used for feasibility studies. For the larger feasibility study, if our technical advisors, if they don't have the bandwidth, right? Our bandwidth is pretty stretched. So, or different type of a feasibility study, and for outside the box type of grants. Now, Maplewood and South Orange were awarded a challenge grant when they were applying for the grant because it was a think outside the box type of a project. You don't see too many municipalities, paid fire departments in New Jersey coming together. And then the implementation grants are what they sound like. They are for 2 or more municipalities that are looking to share a particular service, whether it's sharing animal control services or a larger shared service. We've also seen municipalities come together to purchase street sweepers and or fire equipment when they're providing the service with the new regulations for the watershed program, and people are municipalities are being required to buy street sweepers. So it's anything from merged departments to purchasing equipment and or a larger shared service. The County Shared Services Coordinator Grant is also one of my favorites because it involves targeting municipalities, targeting counties. Each county in New Jersey can apply to the program to have a shared services coordinator in their county. We currently have 12 shared services coordinator, which is more than half the county. Back when we started the program, we only had 5, but we've seen a lot of traction over the years in the LEAP program overall. The county shared services act as a single point of contact within their county. And so the municipalities in the county can go to the county shared services coordinator, find out what's going on in their county, what other needs might be, what they might need within their county. And the county shared services coordinator can also reach out and act as a liaison within the county among the municipalities. We administer that program here too. We provide a 2-day training course for that program. And so since the LEAP grant implementation in 2019, just the LEAP implementation grants alone, we've seen an estimated cost savings to local units of $56,461,734. That's just the LEAP implementation grants just themselves since the implementation of the program. This is an estimated ratio of a 3-to-1 cost savings to municipalities throughout the state. And that's a pretty significant cost savings. So for every $1,000 awarded, government units have saved approximately $3,000. When you break it down into when you go from the millions down into the thousands, you can see the impact of the program. And so last year alone, in fiscal year 25, the fiscal year 26 LEAP grant program will be opening up in a few years. But just to give you a little bit of example as to the traction that has been gained over the last few years for the LEAP program, we received 66 LEAP applications last year, which represented a 43% increase over the previous year, and accounted for 25% of all applications since the inception of the program. The funds requested was over $15 million last year, and in fiscal year 2024, for instance, the fund amount requested was $11 million, and that increase is just significant. And the word is getting out there. So we've hit this great momentum where we just want to keep moving with that momentum to get out there and promote these LEAP grants. Because, as Rick mentioned earlier, we can go to different conferences throughout the state, and many people are still learning about the LEAP grants, even though the program's been in existence for over 6 years, where people are still learning about what the Local Assistance Bureau can bring to municipal governments or local governments or county governments. So the program is just gaining momentum, and we want to see that continue in this new administration and continue to create success stories.
Yeah, and I think what I love about the LEAP is that we're giving not just a level of technical expertise, but funding at every step of this process, right? So we're talking about funding from the sense of the feasibility studies, right? How are we going to do this, right? Because I think some of the intimidation in these conversations is, where do we even start? So with this structuring, I feel like this is a holistic approach. We're giving some technical assistance and support at the concept creation. We want to make sure that not only in the implementation of equipment, right, but in the execution point, you have that stretch. We're going to let that creative juice flow and then have this executed. And then I love that we're also investing in the human intelligence, right? These coordinators and the people talent in this. And I think that's the swan song to me about the program. This is about us finding the best of each other in the stakeholder collaboration, and then trusting enough for it to land, and then giving people the resources to do it. Now, I want to make sure we leave a little bit of room to share out kind of where to get this, right? Because to me, this episode is an opportunity for folks to hear where we've gone and why this momentum needs to continue, but also where we need to kind of move going forward. Now, briefly, Rick, we talked a little bit about shared services, right, and some of these success points, right? The EMS component, making sure that we've got some intentionality even with our municipal partners. Tell me a little bit, I think, very briefly about from the law enforcement end, right? So, we teetered into everything from, public safety, the DPW, the municipal courts, but talk me through a bit, because you've got a law enforcement background. Where has there been that success in the program in our law enforcement support and public safety efforts on that vein?
Well, as everybody knows, the law enforcement aspect in any municipality is always one of the biggest parts of the budget. So when we're called upon, we look at data analysis of the police department, and we look at how many calls for service they may have and how many officers they have and how much they're spending. some of our success stories has been in the Camden Metro Police Department, where Governor Christie set that program in place for us. And then later on, they did a shared service with Woodland. We also did one involved in Lake Como and Belmar, which after 6 months, we went back to evaluate it. And the citizens in Lake Como loved the fact that we put the program in place. The officers are great that are in Belmar, and it's a very, very big success story for us. One of the other ones was in Woodbury Heights and in Woodbury City. And another one that I like to mention is South Harrison and Woolwich Police that also did the police and also did the regional courts. So those are very, very large shared services. And again, to emphasize, they're usually the largest part of the budget other than the school budgets that everybody pays for in their school taxes.
Yeah, and I don't think folks always know that, right? So when we're talking about public safety, we're talking about public works, we're talking about even the municipal court, right? These are critical services and they cost a lot and they're not going away, right? Because the whole point of good government and civic engagement and our, leadership and support practicing and working towards these dollars is that we've got these services at the ready. And I think that's important to note, right? And so every time that we've got this collaboration and combination of resources in the public safety lens, to me, that's a great messenger for how it can win in any other type of service that a town, a county, the state can provide. Now, Eileen, and I know we've got to, end soon with some key resources, and I think a bit of a call to action next, right? How do we keep this party going? Eileen, I think you've highlighted some great examples. I'd like to hear from folks too, because of the momentum and, I think excitement that's happening around the program. I feel like some folks got it before we even kind of got to this point of shared services being so successful. Can you walk me through, one instance where you and the team kind of came into a support point coming from a town or a county, they were ready to kind of be at this table, and how that successfully really reached a finish line? Because I think our viewers need to hear too, this is catching on, and how we've been able to really kind of get some information in there and then get out of the way so it could be great.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thanks, Kaya. So we came into the Central Municipal Court of Atlantic County is the first court in the state of New Jersey that it's administered by a county, because as you mentioned, there are essential services. Each municipality in the state of New Jersey is required to have a municipal court. They established that there was a pilot program established a few years ago where a county with a certain population could establish its own court. That's just a little bit of background for you. So the officials in Atlantic County thought it was a great idea to do that. In order for a court to be approved through a regionalization, the administrative offices of the courts need to be involved. And so the County of Atlantic, the officials in Atlantic County, the county counsel's office, county executive, collaborated with the administrative offices of the court and undertook a feasibility study on their own to determine the potential success of a court with 9 or 10 municipalities and with the county as the lead. And so that was a 2-year process. It was a 2-year program where you had officials coming together with committees and subcommittees. And at one point, they brought us in to help shepherd them through the process again, because there were, as a state agency and as the technical advisors, we had experiences in other types of shared service agreements and arrangements. We also have the connection at the Department of Civil Service. We helped the collaborators who were establishing the Central Municipal Court connect with the officials over at the Civil Service Commission and supported them and actually assisted them with their employment reconciliation plan. As Rick mentioned earlier, when a larger shared service that involves people, right? The human capital is the most important. We always want to see a streamlining of services and people going out through attrition or soft landings. And so we had to create a whole brand new table of organization for the Central Municipal Court, create an employment reconciliation plan, and have that approved by the civil service. So they brought us in the middle. We helped shepherd them through to the end, and they basically closed the deal with our assistance.
Yeah, that's a lot of players. I
A
mean,
lot of players.
we're
Yeah.
talking about courts, which have their own level of expertise,
Yes.
challenge point, efficiencies, issues. We're talking about Civil Service Commission, which for folks that may not know, is a really key linchpin in workforce development and structuring, right? And is really a key focal area from local, county, and state. You've got to make sure that there's a way for that staffing and for that personnel to be blended that's within regulation.
Correct.
So I got to shout out that partnership, right? Because that's another example, I think, especially in this administration, where we really come in together with our sister agencies. And to me, that feels like if the state can do it, so can local, right? If we can share our sandbox, right? We now are showing that not just in a local context, but even with our courts. So I think that's a brilliant example.
I think one of the important things I wanted to emphasize about the court was that they're providing social services for the defendants.
Mm-hmm.
For the 10 municipalities whose defendants come to this shared court, they are offered social services. Therefore, we have less repeat offenders. And that's why the success of this program is doing so well, because now we have less offenders coming back to the courts again.
Well, and I think that's been the theme point for DCA for a number of years, right? Like, here are these practical applications of making sure that it's as least challenging as possible for residents to get to what they need. And if they don't know about another element as they have to interact with government, right? In the courts, for example, as you know, Rick, we're now making sure, hey, you've got to go through this process. Here's some other things, though, that you may not be aware of. And the brilliance of that is we're setting transparency in the planning of what we're doing, and we're also making it available for the residents. So they're seeing the proof in the pudding. I love that example. Now, we've talked so much about where we've had these wins. And, you know, the tough part, I think, in government for folks that are in it, and I think even if you, as you observe it, right, and we've just we're in a very important month, right? We've got our voting process. And so change is inevitable. The continuity and legacy structuring of shared services, of the lab, of the LEAP program, I feel like we've set those bricks. I'd like to close off in here, and Rick, I want to hear from you as well, right? Where can we start to kind of garner and remind folks of future support? Because I think everyone knows that you have these concepts, we got the players in the room, you've got to let the work happen, and that's been the last nearly 8 years so that we've been able to show some measurable success. How do we make sure that this keeps going? Because this isn't, from my vantage, just about DCA, local government services, and that municipal intersectionality. This is about a real-time, longitudinal approach to good governance, to budget efficiency, savings, and quality at the same time in the small but mighty state of New Jersey. Rick, what would be the message you want to have to all of our viewers, legislators, locals alike, about how to support this?
We certainly want to mention efficiency, effectiveness, and performance. Those are the main items that we look at when we go into a municipality. But the bottom line is that the LEAP grants and the Local Assistance Bureau has really caught fire. We've got some real great momentum going on right now with regard to the program. We're very excited about the program. We can't wait to go into 2026 to go down to the League of Municipalities and talk more about what the Local Assistance Bureau can do for you. Again, it's no charge. Contact us at 609-930-1981. Again, no cost to any municipality to contact us and have us come in and do an evaluation with regard to the program. I want to echo the fact that we need our legislators and our officials around the state to keep pushing for shared services. It's a worthwhile program for us.
I also want to hear, Eileen, what would be your messaging point, right? Especially because I think, both you and Rick bring the technical eagle eye, but what do you want to leave as a reminder and memory of this and why it's got to continue?
Well, as Rick mentioned, as we've been talking throughout the show, our technical advisors, and our studies and is at no cost to anybody, to any local unit, county government, fire district authority, et cetera, et cetera. We do need funding, though. We need the funding of the LEAP program to continue because it is the incentive, and it is what brings people together. It's the door opener sometimes, right? Shared services is invaluable to the residents of the state of New Jersey. As I go around the state and work on a variety of projects, I see the excitement in people who have put together successful shared services and have created enhancements. And quite often, it's in the background. You don't even know what's going on, but yet it's creating a plan that's improving the lives of all New Jerseyans. And so, to close again, we need the funding. The LEAP grants are just a tremendous program to incentivize shared services and cooperation. We've seen the cooperation of a lot of officials over the last several years to keep an open heart and an open mind.
I think that's a great message to end with. And what I also, want viewers to keep in mind is that what we're talking about is a small investment at the start for not just cost savings, but institutional structuring that is going to lead in whatever shift of government, right? Yeah. And you had a beautiful line, I think, Eileen, that I want us to kind of remember, right? The best government is the one that you don't even know is working. It just works. And I think if we've got a dream we can realize, it's a day when these shared services are going to be so ingratiated in the foundation, right? They're going to be the beams of that tower that it will be automatic. And we'll be talking about shared services at the front line of budget planning, in the policy conversation and the legislative work. But we ask for the momentum. If you're curious about information, we love to share and brag. You check out our data hub. Please check out the Division of Local Government Services. We've got some great website information. And I will say this, when you call that number, Rick, Eileen, or somebody will pick up the phone. We like to answer here at DCA. So
very quickly.
Very quickly. We get as excited as you are. So come to the table. Thank you both, Rick and Eileen, for sharing the wisdom, the challenge, and the wins of this. And let's keep this conversation in the track. Any questions, please visit our DCA website. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.